All right, YouTube, what is up? It's been so long. If you happen to still be here from years ago when I was an intern with a strength athlete, I just want to say thank you for staying subscribed to this channel. Hopefully I can actually sweeten the pot now, because this is going to be my return to YouTube content creation. I'm so excited to provide you guys with some awesome, informative powerlifting content. If you have any wants as far as that goes, please drop it in the comments below. I also want to say thank you to Marcellus, aka the Swolefessor, for featuring me in his recent video. It was awesome to talk with you and Mr. Tim Thibodeau about powerlifting and getting better at it if you're not necessarily genetically great when it comes to the sport. So if you guys have not seen that, please check it out over there. Go over and say hi to Marcellus. I very much doubt that people who are subscribed to me wouldn't be subscribed to Marcellus, but in case you aren't, please go check that out. So we are going to be talking today about game day nutrition, aka how to eat during a powerlifting meet. But first, let's cue that intro. So thanks to my friend Kyla for that awesome intro. That's some footage from my most recent meet, which really at this point in time really wasn't that recent, but still super cool. So let's get into our main points. The first part of this video is why does nutrition on game day, on meet day, even matter? Honestly, that's the biggest pushback that I hear from a lot of athletes when I go to talk to them about how they eat on game day. I'll often hear, doing 9 lifts really isn't that taxing. Why does it matter that I pay attention to what I eat? And you're right, to be honest, doing 9 lifts really isn't the most calorically taxing thing. But the pushback that I always give them is, well, you are going to be lifting or preparing to lift a lot of the times when you would normally eat throughout the day, right? If you think about it, most meets, even the most efficient ones, let's say they start at 8 o'clock in the morning, usually end at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you would normally be eating during those hours and you don't eat, you're probably gonna have a pretty bad day. So my first point when it comes to actually eating on game day is prioritize your calories, guys. So what should that look like? What calories should you actually consume? Simple. You should always strive for at least whatever your normal calories have been throughout your preparation, we'll say within the last 12 weeks or so, whatever that normal amount of food is for you. If you've been dieting to make weight, which I would not recommend, by the way, but if you have, I would say at least 20% more than that. And even those of you that are in a caloric maintenance or surplus could probably even get away with that. It's always good to have a few more calories in your system, just from the standpoint of always having a reserve of energy. Let's move on to point number 2, the actual composition of your meals. What should they include and why? So I think the best way to frame the composition of your meals on game day is to talk a little bit about the energy systems of the body and what they do. So most people don't know this, but our body has 3 energy systems that are utilized during exercise. They're all utilized throughout the entire period that you are doing any sort of exercise, but certain ones are emphasized more than others. So if you guys take a look at the graphic right here, the first one is the ATP creatine phosphate system, mouthful for sure. The second is anaerobic glycolysis, and the third is oxidative phosphorylation. So if you look at the graphic, you can see that all 3, like I said, are utilized during exercise at some point or another. But the activity level, the amount of energy that is produced from each of these systems is greatly increased depending on the duration of time. Each of these systems also consumes certain molecules in order to create energy. As you might guess by the name, the ATP creatine phosphagen system utilizes creatine. This is the system that honestly is going to be utilized the most during our lifting. So it's definitely important to make sure that you are supplementing with creatine or getting that through your diet from red meat in some way or another. However, that's not really something that you can change on game day, so we're not really going to talk about it. But in preparation for your meet, that's a little bonus point. You definitely want to make sure that you are supplementing with creatine in some way or another if you are not already. However, if you again look at the graphic, especially during that first 10 seconds, you can see that glycolysis, even though it's not the system that is emphasized, its use starts to ramp up and then it becomes the main system after 10 seconds of exercise. Now, I know most of the lifts you're going to be doing are probably not going to be more than 10 seconds, unless you're doing like a super grinder on squats or bench press or even deadlift, honestly. But it's still important to emphasize the macronutrient that is consumed in glycolysis, which is carbohydrate. That context clue might be there. You know, glycogen is the stored form of carbohydrate, glycolysis. So there you go. Our creatine stores are emphasized with the ATP-CP system. Glycolysis is mainly powered by carbohydrate. So therefore, when it comes to the composition of your meals on game day especially, you want to emphasize carbohydrate. Now that doesn't mean that you can't consume protein and fat, but it's probably better to have less of that than you normally do. Number one, you're not going to be building muscle on game day, so it's not really important to consume a lot of protein. If anything, it would probably just slow down digestion. In fact, both of the other macronutrients have an effect that they slow down digestion of the carbohydrate in your system. So you probably want to keep fat and fat and protein to trace amounts when it comes to game day. I would say 80 to 90% of the overall calories you consume on game day should probably be from carbohydrate. Now, what sort of food choices would that include? Generally speaking, I'm going to recommend low glycemic index foods. Now, the caveat there is that the glycemic index was designed for only consuming carbohydrate in a meal. Again, I just went over this, but when protein and fat is added to a meal, it changes the digestion of those carbohydrates ever so slightly. But if you think about it, if most of your food is going to be coming from carbohydrate, this scale is probably going to apply. So I would recommend low glycemic index foods. The main reason is that there's no fiber in them. And again, fiber, much like protein and fat, is something that slows down digestion. And we definitely want to make sure that the carbohydrate that we are consuming gets into our system quickly. Time is important when it comes to consuming these foods. So what could that be? That can be a number of things. As far as normal foods, things that we would normally consume, things like pasta with no fiber or rice are excellent choices. Those are usually my go-tos on game day. Even potatoes, despite the fact that they have a little bit of fiber, would be okay. You could also include things like candy in this category. And I know candy is super popular with powerlifters on game day because it's very easy to just pop in your mouth and go. And you could also have some sort of carbohydrate-based drink. A sports drink would be excellent as well. All of these things should be included in all of the meals that you consume throughout the day. That also brings me to my next point, which is water and electrolytes. So even though you might not be cutting weight, again, this video is from the standpoint of somebody who has not cut weight for their meet or has already rehydrated properly throughout the day. However, if you guys do want to see a weight cutting and rehydration video for optimal performance in powerlifting meets, please let me know and I will be happy to put that together for you guys. So let me tell you guys a little bit about the sodium potassium pump and how that works. So the sodium potassium pump essentially is a protein that is in every single cell of your body, mainly in the musculature of your body. So it's extremely important for muscular contraction and the output of force. 24,000 sodium ions are pumped out of your cell while 16K are pumped in. This creates a charge in the cell, making it slightly negative, which sort of turns it into a battery and allows the muscles of the body to do work through the nervous system. So low levels of electrolytes or extreme highs can really affect that pump and affect your ability to actually output force. This is why having adequate amounts of both water and sodium and potassium are important, because all of those are changing throughout the cell, and if those are a little bit off, it can really affect your performance. So what should you do there? So again, if you did not cut weight, my recommendation would be the following. A typical sports drink such as Gatorade, Powerade, something that you can get at the store, Pedialyte, or even Game Day Nutrition Hydro, the new product coming from myself and Richard Cho, which will be available soon, would all suffice. So one to two servings of that throughout the meet should be absolutely fine to make sure that you have an adequate amount in your system. Salting your food a little bit or adding something like soy sauce to it would also be beneficial. I would also recommend that you guys are consuming a normal amount of water for you throughout the day. So that doesn't include any sort of sports drink. I mean water in and of itself. Because again, if you have too much sodium and potassium and not enough water to help transport it through the cells, that can, one, lead to cramping, or two, lead to a feeling of weakness. Again, if you overconsume any sort of electrolyte, it can actually cause you to have a sort of feeling like you're drunk, and it'll make you feel like you want to pass out. I cannot make this up. It just has to do with the amount of sodium ions that enter the brain, and it makes you feel like you want to pass out. So definitely don't overdo it when it comes to salt. Do not chug soy sauce. All right, so lastly, guys, let's talk a little bit about timing and when you should eat when it comes to these meals. So of course, I think most powerlifters know that the most important meal when it comes to game day is that post-weigh-in meal. To me, I think you should get anywhere between 40 and 50% of your total calories that you're planning on consuming during this particular meal. This is just a little bit of an insurance policy because you have more time to digest the food compared to during a meet. You're probably gonna have to eat a little bit more on the go for the rest of the meal, so it's important that you make this one the biggest. Let's say the average powerlifter has 2,500 calories to consume. This meal should be a whopping 1,250 calories. And again, I would recommend that 80 to 90% of that come from carbohydrate. Now, again, I know that seems like a lot of food, but again, if you're consuming that from things like white rice and pasta, as well as candy and sports drink, all of that will go down relatively easily. So definitely make sure you eat that closer to your weigh-in, as close to the point that you weigh in as possible, so that you have enough time to actually digest it and get it into your system. Walking around after you've eaten will also help integrate it, just because that promotes the flow of blood throughout the body. And also consuming caffeine for when you take your pre-workout about usually a half hour out from lifting, that'll actually help store the carbohydrate. Caffeine has the quality that it actually helps with carbohydrate uptake. So your second meal should be immediately post squats. The main reason for this is so that you have energy going into the bench press. So this meal should definitely contain some kind of quick digesting carbohydrate. I would recommend it come from something like a liquid source, like a carbohydrate drink or sports drink, or some kind of serving of candy. This should be at least 25% of your total calories in order to make sure that you have an optimal spread of calories throughout the day, just so that you're feeling pretty good. Again, I would also recommend that you consume some sort of electrolyte serving here at some point in time. Again, you only need 1 to 2 servings throughout the day, but the midpoint of the meet is always a good point to have that. And then the last meal should, of course, be immediately post-bench. I think that this is arguably the most important meal because most lifters, they usually feel the least amount of They usually feel the least amount of energy during deadlifts. This is where people tend to gas out a lot. Arguably, deadlift is the most important lift in a meet because it is the make or break lift. It's where you're able to change your third attempt twice, and it's where you can jockey for positioning. You want to make sure that you have an adequate amount of energy to put your absolute best effort into pulls. Again, this type of meal should be exactly the same as what you've had immediately post-bench. It should contain, really easy to consume carbohydrate, something handheld like candy, and something like sports drink, just to make sure that you get that last serving in. Guys, that's going to conclude the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate the... All right. Guys, that's going to conclude the video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. If you have not already, please subscribe for more awesome, informative powerlifting content. Again, if you have any ideas or requests, please drop those in the comments below. You guys can follow me on Instagram at Joe_TSA. You can also follow me on TikTok for short form informative powerlifting content and other general lifting content at the Joe Stanek. And lastly, if you guys are interested in powerlifting coaching at all, you can email me, joe@thestrengthathlete.com. We'll get you set up, get you amongst the best powerlifting team in the world. That's going to do it, guys. Until next time, plus ultra.